The use of an interpreter or an educational interpreter is becoming much more common practice today in public schools where deaf students are in inclusive settings. And there are different schools of thought in interpreting about the relationship between the regular classroom teacher, the teacher of the deaf, and the interpreter. It is our belief that the interpreter really has an integral role in the IEP team. So I would suggest that the interpreter attend the IEP meetings, because many times the interpreter is the one individual who's with the child as the child changes classes throughout the school day. We take a liberal approach to the duties of an educational interpreter. Many times an educational interpreter can serve a tutoring role, in that that person has a better idea probably of, rather than most others, of what the student's language level is, of what the student really understands, where the student has trouble in terms of vocabulary or slang expressions. I know many times in our interpreting program here at UNCG, the instructors are very familiar with slang expressions that are heard in school. So it's very important that a deaf student know what those are, because some of those could either be advantageous to one or get one into trouble. So I think that a child who uses an interpreter has a great deal of success potential, because they're getting the information, they have access to the information, to the content of, let's say, the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, or the testing that's done.
Well, for deaf students to be successful, especially with deaf children, I do think it does take a collaboration of a lot of people involved: the regular ed teacher, the deaf ed teacher, the interpreter, or the parents. The parents do, I think, play a key role. The more involved the parents are, I think it really helps with the child's success. It's an asset.
The interpreter has a great role to play in formative assessment, because they can know maybe nuances of what the child is really understanding, because many times a deaf student will nod their head yes, and a teacher will think, oh, they understand what I'm saying, but what they're really doing is sort of saying, I'm sort of understanding kind of what you say, or letting them know that you're making a connection with them. So you have to be very careful about looking at the signal. It would be very important for teachers or general educators to understand more about deaf culture and the role that deaf culture plays in a deaf student's life. Now, it's very important for a deaf student, I would say it's crucial for a deaf student to have socialization with other deaf students. Many times in public school situations, a deaf student may feel very isolated because there's no other deaf student there. So if you can understand the importance of that in terms of increasing a deaf student's self-esteem, identity is very, very important, particularly with children who are in middle school and high school, because they need to know that they are part of a certain group. And if you remember back to your middle school and high school days, your peer group was very important to you. So are there opportunities for you to maybe even collaborate with or with the teacher of the deaf, who might know other students who are deaf? So maybe have some after-school club for deaf students. Or the teacher of the deaf can help you with this. Are there any adult deaf individuals in the community that the child could start interacting with? And there's certain special events, like different areas have regional resource centers for the deaf, or different associations for the deaf. I know they are in fairly large cities, but they will have like picnics, get-togethers, social events. Sometimes they'll have silent dinners when they'll go out to a restaurant all together. I think it would be very important for you to help the deaf student have access to those kind of social events, because the lack of hearing really creates a great deal of social isolation, and that can lead to a lot of other negative self-images. So I think that if you understand the role of social interaction amongst deaf people,
at our school give up.
I think to put oneself in the position of not having access to information, you can understand how deaf people want to be included. They have a very rich culture, a very bonded culture, and we who are hearing sometimes don't necessarily understand that. But I think in order to value someone as an individual and to give them access to communication so they can become part of larger society and have the same educational and professional and employment opportunities as everyone else.